Hey everybody, welcome to our DT sharing today.
Hi. So we're covering Hebrews 11 and 12:1.
Okay, so I was just looking at the first part of this text, and faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And I was thinking about this idea of hoped for, and faith often can seem like a feeling, right? But the word here is the word hope for implies something very substantial. And I think the English language kind of betrays that. But in the original, it's about something that's very certain, objective reality in which I place my trust. And what is that in which I place my trust? The object of that trust is Jesus Christ. And it's not a feeling. It's not I hope this might happen, but it's something that's much more certain, much more assured. And I thought about the Course 101 example about faith being not about how much we have, the amount, but the object of our faith. So, for example, if you see a lake that's frozen over and your faith to cross that lake is not dependent on how you feel, whether you feel very like sure or not. It's whether that ice and that lake is actually thick or not, right? 1 to 2 inches versus like a foot or two. It's the object of our faith that matters. And I think that's important in our day and age, because I was thinking about this text and even Jeff's message from this past weekend from Focus, and how so much of our Christian life and experience of being a Christian and our faith is about how we feel. And as we see in examples of many of these men of faith, it's more than how they feel. It's about their commitment and the promise by which they made. And similarly, I thought about, my own marriage. And when I proposed to my wife, it wasn't about how I feel necessarily, although that's important. It's the promise, the commitment that we're making to one another. So I was just thinking about that from this first verse.
So what I did was, I was thinking about what are the elements and ingredients of faith. So what I did was I went through every single verse and I listed out how faith is defined according to each person and each verse. So, verse 1, it's like assurance of things hoped for, and it's conviction of things not seen. And anyway, I just went through each one. And like, for example, in verse 7, Noah, it's having reverent fear. And verse 8, Abraham, it's obeying, not even knowing where he was going. And then in verse 16, it's they desire a better country. So I was just thinking about, as I was listing it out, I was looking for themes and elements of faith based on this chapter. And some of the themes I saw were, that a lot of these people, they had their eyes fixed on heaven and a heavenly reward. So regardless of what condition that they were in and the challenges and costs that they were facing on this earth, they kept their eyes fixed on spiritual truths, on heaven. And another theme was having reverent fear of God, as that was the description of Noah, and that led to his total obedience, regardless of how ridiculous it seemed what he was doing. And that was the description of Noah. You can see that in Abraham, and you can see that in the marching around Jericho. Anyway, so there's that theme, and then there's the refusal to make a home here on earth, and enjoy the comforts of sin, and comforts, and just trading that for spiritual rewards. So there's that theme. And then another theme was just the decision to align the self to the people of God. So I saw that in Rahab, I see that in Moses, how he chooses to align himself to the people of God versus to be known as Pharaoh's son. And so as I was thinking about those things, I realized that there's a lot of relevance to our context and how we can apply what it means to be faithful. Because I think a lot of times it's like, what does faith mean? Like John was talking about, it seems like it's just you're just supposed to believe blindly. But actually, as we look at this portrait, at this chapter and the portrait of faith, and you dissect it and you see what the ingredients are, you realize there are a lot of concrete ways in which it manifests in our own life. And one of those things, it's like, being faithful in the midst of the slog that Jeff was talking about, and having our eyes fixed on heaven, even through the slog, just trusting in God, And I was thinking that for each of these people, Moses, Noah, Sarah, they had a really long wilderness period. For Moses, it was 40 years in the desert before that burning bush experience. For Sarah, it was 25 years of waiting before the birth of Isaac. And for Noah, it was so many years of building that ark, being ridiculed by people, like being seen as ridiculous. And I think, for us, when we're in the midst of that slog, it's not 25 years. it's like just a few months or maybe a year or maybe 2 years or three. And it's the challenge to remain, to keep our eyes fixed on heaven, on God, on spiritual truths, and not to waver, and to be committed to going through that slog. And I was just also thinking about the reverent fear of God leading to obedience against an unknowable future. There's so many situations where I think we are faced with an unknowable future, where we make a decision, we're kind of scared about what that's going to entail. And like, for example, taking a lesser paying job, maybe financially we think, wow, this is going to hurt us. So that's kind of an unknowable future, but we're choosing that because maybe that offers better hours and helps us to invest in our spiritual life. But anyway, I think there's all these ways in which we can apply what it means to be faithful as we think about how it played out in these people's lives.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, as we see a showcase, really, we call this the Hall of Faith, chapter 11, Hebrews chapter 11. And as you see the myriad of heroes here, I think it can feel a little daunting. And it also feels like, okay, look, it makes sense. These guys are awesome. They're in the Bible anyway, right? But personally, we can feel like, oh, I'm no hero. And I know I can feel that way too. I'm just John, just little old me. And it's easy to fall into that kind of trap. But I think that'll be missing the point of what this passage is really trying to showcase and show us, that it's not about being superheroes, but it's about living a life of faithfulness and being committed. And these people had their own ups and downs as well, and that's not totally highlighted here. As Eldon talked about their wilderness periods, yeah, there's times when Abraham had not trusted God, and when he had gone his own way, or even Moses said, "Send someone else." And there are many cases in which we see people like that, and yet they're showcased here because in the end they were faithful and true. I was thinking of a quote from C.S. Lewis that I picked up, and it says here. He calls us with all our habits and hangups, warts and worries, to action. We're called to step with the world, hop up on the stage of history, and take our place in God's roll call of the faithful. Of course, we are inadequate, but so have been all others who would have evidenced the grace of God. It would not be grace otherwise. And God calls us not because of our abilities, but in a way it's for our sake, and it shows that it's about God's work and his grace in our lives. And so I was just encouraged and challenged. And as we end in chapter 12:1, sorry, it's cut off here, but we have this hall of faith, a cloud of witnesses to help us press on. And in the stands, it's like they're crying out, cheering us on to keep pressing forward. So that was an encouraging thought too, because they want to see us be faithful to the end as well. So I thought that was a really encouraging ending to this passage. So, all right, that's it.
All right, see you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.